Aida, didn't you recently complete a master in counselling?
Yes, I did. It wasn't recently though, that was 2 years ago.
How did you come to that from your background as a journalist to doing a master in counselling?
I've always wanted to do a master's, and I knew it wasn't going to be anything in comms, communications. I've always been interested in psychology. It was during the pandemic where we were all at home, and I was looking up courses online, and I saw this master's in counseling course with Open University. And I was also looking at other private universities. There are some universities which require you to have a undergrad in psychology. So I didn't though. So OUM had masters in counseling, which didn't require you to have an undergrad in psychology. So I took that opportunity to study it, and I think it was a really good idea to do that. Before we get into this topic of the brains behind bylines, how having unrelated degrees can actually enhance journalism, Farid. Let's get to some of the top stories in the Star and Star Online today. Malaysia and Thailand strengthen cross-border disaster preparedness. This is involving the bomb explosion in Sungai Golok. Young ones are using AI to rethink their career options. And the number of vape poisoning among youth is up, unfortunately. And we did this cover story recently about the licensing issue and all that. So welcome to the Life and the City podcast, everyone. This is our 10th episode for this season, Farid.
Yes.
It's hard to believe we've come this far.
Yes.
It's really fast.
It's really exciting, and we've decided to close this season with an interesting topic. I think Aida and I, we both know journalists who have studied something else in their university, or maybe have pursued a master or postgraduate education in fields that are not related to journalism. But today we are looking at how those things might have actually helped to enhance their journalism and their work ethics. So we've prepared a number of questions, a number of topics we're going to have to discuss. Maybe Aida, you can start us off.
Sure. Well, I studied a diploma in journalism and then proceeded to obtain a degree in comms and media management. Because at that time, this was 20 years ago, I thought that would be an ideal career path because I started working as a cadet journalist in Penang. So I had already experienced a lot on the job. And when I decided to resign and move to Klang Valley to continue my studies, I came in with a whole lot of experience, right? And I thought that was an interesting path to take instead of studying and then going into the job. But since I had already accumulated a lot of invaluable experience as a reporter and then started my tertiary education, it brought a lot of interesting experience into the classroom. Yeah. What about you, Farid?
Well, I actually studied chemical engineering in the UK. I have a degree and a master in chemical engineering, in fact. Um, but after I graduated, I actually somehow made the jump into IT service. I think I was in the IT industry for about 3 years. And then after I got laid off from my previous job due to some some expenditure cut, some financial cost saving measure by the company, that was how I decided to jump into journalism. And I've been in this industry for about 6 years now. But my introduction to the media industry is not actually, I mean, I'm not new to the industry. I mean, how do I say this? Because both my parents were actually employed in the media industry. My mom was with Utusan and my dad was Berita Harian. So when I was a kid, I regularly tag along my mom to her office. So I've been around journalists, I've been around media practitioners for as long as I can remember. The only thing was my parents were not really thrilled about me following in their footsteps. But I guess after 6 years in the industry, now they are like, okay, you know what, you do what you want to do.
But what made you originally choose to study chemical engineering?
Well, when I was the first person in my family to go to university, so after SPM, I got a pretty good result. I got straight A's. So I spoke to some of my teachers. What do I want to do? So a lot of them said, well, you seem to be good at this, subjects, chemistry, physics, at maths. Why don't you consider a career in why don't you consider engineering? It will be easy for you to get a job once you get back. And I thought, okay, let's do that. But halfway through the course, when I was in the UK, I thought, this is not my thing. And it's very technical. This is not my thing. So it was around that time when I got involved in competitive debating when I was in the UK. And I got involved with students from politics courses, economy courses, philosophy courses. And it was around that time when I feel like this is more my crowd. This is more what I want to do. And I feel like journalism is a platform that allows me to explore these topics in greater details. So that's how I developed an interest in journalism.
Aside from being too technical, what was it about engineering that just didn't augur well with you?
I remember we had this discussion in class. We were just talking, like before a lecture. So this number of my classmates were talking about, the difference between stainless steel and carbon steel, aluminium steel, which one is better. And I was seated there and I listened to them, and I could understand every single thing they were talking about, but I just was not interested nor invested in it. I just thought, how dry. I mean, no offense. It's just not my thing. It's not my soul.
Interesting.
How about you? I mean, you also made quite a pivot, journalism to counselling, which is a very niche subject, a very important subject. I would add. How did you go from journalism to that?
Well, as you know, being journalists, we have a host of issues and characters that we deal with on a daily basis, right? And working in the corporate sector, there is a lot of ups and downs, right? In the company itself, people you deal with outside and inside your workspace. So I had always been interested in psychology, why we are the way we are, why people do the things they do. So I thought that moment during the height of the pandemic was a good opportunity for me to study it. And like I said, I have no regrets studying it because it just put another feather in my cap. Because when I started off my career, I didn't, well, just some background information. I didn't do well in school. I wasn't a good student. So unlike you, where you had the grades to sort of charter your course, I didn't. So my options were not a lot. And I had to think about working first. Also through the advice of my parents. Work first, see where you go, and if you decide to study later, then go ahead. So I started off, my first job was a waitress in Penang. And after a year into that, I thought, could I maybe pursue something in the hospitality industry? And not as in study, but just work my way up through the ranks, right? And I was in the industry for 3.5 years. In those 3.5 years, I tried. I went for those interviews to go up around, on this hospitality career path, but it didn't work for me. So after 3.5 years, I thought I didn't want to pursue this job anymore. And it so happens that, and I believe that if one door closes, another one opens. It so happened that at that time it was start of the millennium, 2000, year 2000, and there was an advertisement in the paper for a cadet journalist in New Straits Times. And I thought, why don't I just applied for it, because I could write and my language was not too bad. So I applied for the job and I was called for the first interview in KL in the Balai Berita office, and then went back to Penang. And then I got called for a second interview. Again, I had to come back to KL. And after that, they gave me the job. And I remember my first day, I had no clue what being a journalist was. And my former colleagues at the Penang office did not make it easy for me. But if you're watching, I actually thank you for throwing me in the deep end of the pool to know what being a journalist actually entailed. So I was there for 3.5 years. And in those 3.5 years, I think 2 of them, I was a court reporter. And that was really something amazing. I learned so much. I made a lot of friends in the legal fraternity. And I can't imagine, had I not taken that path, where would I be right now? I mean, it could have gone 100 different ways. So again, clearly my pattern was 3.5 years, right? The first job and this job. But then I thought I probably needed to continue my tertiary education. So I moved to Klang Valley, and again, it was seeing my path, and I thought, why not just study journalism? Because in hindsight, I didn't have that many people offering me advice. I thought I needed to just chart my own course. And this was the most practical way I could think of. So I moved here, I did a diploma in journalism, again, because I didn't have the grades in school, so I couldn't go straight into the degree course. Anyway, so diploma and the degree course for another 2 years. And graduated, hooray, before I was 30. So I had always been a late bloomer in my life. And I joined a magazine as a writer. And again, that door closed. 3.5 years. See, there was a pattern. I resigned, and after that, I got an offer to join the Star. But I have clearly beaten that 3.5 year streak. It's been 15 years, and it's been quite a journey. Really, it has been. But I feel now when we get interns, Farid, they come from various backgrounds, right? It's not only journalism. And when they tag along with us for our assignments or in the office or just, chat to get to know each other, I always ask our interns, what's your major? If it's journalism, why do you want to be a journalist? Right? And I feel that a lot of the young ones who want to study journalism, they don't have the full outlook of what it takes to be one, right? What do you think?
I think a lot of people I've spoken to have this idea that journalists simply sit in the office and write.
And it's very glamorous, which is not actually.
Yeah, but we actually do a lot more than just sit and write stuff. In fact, for me, writing is only 10% of the job.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that we have to do before we can sit down in front of the computer and write. And trust me, I mean, I love writing, it's my favorite part of the job. But there are other parts of the job that are not as great for me. Now, you had a very interesting interesting story of how you got into this. If I could share my story too.
Sure.
My parents were, my mom especially, was very insistent that I should not follow in her footsteps. She was very adamant that I should become an engineer like I was supposed to be, according to her. So I was employed in the IT industry for 3 years. At the time, I didn't know how I got into that. I just grabbed the first job I could find. I was young. I had no experience. So when someone offered me a job, I took it. And somehow I was in the industry for 3 years. And then I was cut off because of financial problems and stuff. And then I decided, you know what? I love writing. And so I began shooting my resumes to as many companies as possible, and one of them was the Star. And one thing I learned during my engineering degree was that you have to be persistent, and you have to show that you are willing to go the extra mile to get what you want. So at the time, I remember I went to the Star's website. So there were the editor's emails there. So I just copied I just sent this my resume, my cover letter, and a couple of PDF documents of my sample writings. I sent them to them. I said, I want to get this job. I want to be a journalist and a columnist. I don't even know what the title is at the time. I just sent it again and again and again. And the initial response was, I think there was no vacancy, but I didn't give up. I think for about 1 week, I sorry to say, the editors are watching this. I spam them. I send the email again and again and again.
Well, persistence pays off.
Yeah, and eventually, someone called me up for an interview, and I went. I think I was here for. I think it was a very long interview. There was a series of questions and things I had to do, and 3 or 4 days later, I found out I got a job. So when my mom found out, she was like, why do you want to be a journalist? Why do you want to work like me?
And your answer was?
And my answer was, well, it's none of your business. I love doing, I love doing this. But I'm not going to pretend. The first few weeks on the job were, I was like, oh my God, can I do this? You know?
What was your first gig as a reporter?
I remember, I think I joined sometime in May 2nd, 2019. So at the time, our editor, Fred, she said, Farid, I want you to go to Jalanta. And at the time, I think, no, not Jalanta. At the time, the Federal Territories Ministry was moving the Hari Raya Bazaar from Jalanta to Dataran Merdeka at that time. So Fred said, I want you to go there, come up with a 2-page story. And I was like, how am I going to do that? I had no idea. But luckily, I had one of my seniors, Grace Chen. If you've seen her byline, she guided me. She said, okay, Farid, you come with me. And she approached people with such ease. You know, she's a very friendly person. And she just got these people to spill all the teas, you know. So I was like, wow, that's how you do it, you know. So from that point onwards, I learned how to start a conversation. Because I was an introvert before this job. I think I still am. But you kind of have to fake it. You kind of have to pretend to be friendly, to be nice. Hopefully, one day I'll actually become actually nice and friendly.
I get what you're saying. Because when I started off as a cadet reporter as well, I was nervous, to say the least, and a bit shy. I wasn't a shy kid, really. I was kind of an extrovert. But somehow, again, coming into the job with no experience, and unlike your first assignment, mine was schlepping over to the school next door because there was a drowning incident involving 2 of the students. And my then senior colleague just told me, go to the school, get the comments from the headmistress about the students who drowned. And it was just crickets in my head after that. So I walked over to the school. It was just next door to the office. Headmistress wasn't there. So I just sat there. There was no one to talk to me. And I thought, how on earth am I going to get this story? Who was I supposed to interview? What? Nothing. So about an hour after that, I walked back to the office and he asked me, so what do you have? Nothing. I have nothing. So there was some sort of silent treatment in the office for the next few hours. And it was just nerve-wracking. I thought, will I survive this week in this job? And I think a few hours later, he sat me down, he told me what this job entailed, what was I supposed to do, right? And it was hilarious, really. But like you said, it forced me to open up and to learn how to talk to people, to get the information. Yes, we have to be friendly. No one wants a rude person asking you questions, right?
Like, who's this busybody probing me now?
Right. So we have to hone that skill, the interpersonal skills. We have to hone it. And I think we've done a not too shabby job honing that skill.
Hopefully.
But let me ask you this. You have a background in chemical engineering, right?
Chemical and biological, actually. Not to brag, but that's the full title.
Right. So what skills from your degree and masters show up in your day-to-day job as a journalist?
I don't know how to. Again, how do I say this? In engineering, we have a very high bar when it comes to verifying information. So, you can't. I mean, for example, when we cite sources, right? So in engineering, when I did my research project, I had to cite sources. So I need to know where to find these sources. I need to be able to assess whether they are credible or not. Now, when I write my lab report, my engineering report, I had to be there's a certain discipline that I had to employ, and in journalism, I find actually the process is actually quite similar. Who you are interviewing, who are your sources, how do you verify the information? The only difference is that engineering is all, to me, it's numbers and figures. And journalism, on the other hand, is a little bit more nuanced. You're dealing with humans, you're dealing with emotions, and emotions are not facts. So I think in terms of transferable skill, it comes down to how I verify information. I have a very high bar for that. But even then, I am not prone. I mean, I am not. I make mistakes every now and then, which is
Yeah,
why
we all do actually.
which is why we have editors. How about
Yeah.
you, Aida?
Well, if you ask me, how has getting a master's in counselling helped or shaped the way I handle stress and deadlines or even ethical decisions? A lot, actually, because we were all stressed out during the pandemic, right? And as I started my course, I thought, well, that was interesting, learning about stress management, emotional management, dealing with anger, a lot of those things. So I won't say I'm a much calmer person. I have my moments. But learning the basics of psychology and counseling, how to talk to people, I feel my empathy levels have improved. And
Was it bad before?
not to say bad, it needed a lot of improvement.
Okay.
But even now, I have sort of flown off my rocker once in a while. And I feel we've all done that. And we've all dealt with people who have done that. So, so in terms of how has counseling shaped my journey as a journalist, it has taught me to let a lot of things go. How about you?
Well, I don't study counseling, although I have a lot of books on psychology, but I'm not saying it's the same as actually doing a master in it. But yeah, I don't have any formal qualification in psychology or counseling. I do find that very interesting and something I think it's a good thing to have. It's a good skill to have. As for me, can I reframe your question? Are you asking me like how has my degree and my master helped me
How
in
has
my
it been useful? Yeah.
how has
in
it
the
been
job?
useful? Right. I have done a number of environmental stories over the years. And a huge part of my course was dedicated towards environmental issues because chemical engineering, we studied about fracking, we studied about carbon storage, these are things which among environmentalists, they are very controversial. And we also, because I studied in the UK, I also had to familiarize myself with some of the regulations in the UK, in Europe, when it comes to environmental issues. So I'm very familiar with environmental stuff. So when I write about environmental issues, for example, I've interviewed a couple of lecturers. So I noticed that sometimes they tend to want to tone down, not to say dumb down, but to tone down their. They try to not to use as much jargons. They try to simplify it so much because they think that I can understand them. And there had been a few times when I tell them it's okay, sir, it's okay, prof, doctor, I actually studied chemical engineering. You can be technical with me. I can understand you.
Right. See, so that boils down to our knowledge behind the
Yeah.
bylines, right? Can you share an example of how your academic knowledge in biology and chemical engineering helped you write or investigate a story?
So I think a few years ago I wrote a story about water pollution, if I'm not mistaken, and I interviewed this one water expert. He's a lecturer too, and so he was explaining to me about a concept called biochemical oxygen demand (BOD), and then he also talked about turbidity, which is a measure of the amount of suspended solids inside water bodies. So when he was explaining it to me, he was like trying to simplify it to me, and I said, it's okay, Prof. Doctor, you can talk to me, and because I've worked because I'm also a journalist who has a background in chemical engineering, I know how to simplify that concept in a way that is accessible to general readers. Obviously, I can't explain it the way I would if I were to write an actual academic papers, but I think it helps. I've written about. I think there was one time when I wrote about prawns dying mysteriously in Sungai Langat. So at that time, people were talking about how the lack of sunlight, the lack of microorganisms inside the water might have contributed to that. So I had to find a way to be able to explain this very specific concept, very scientific concept to ordinary people, because you have to understand as journalists, your readers are from a wide range of backgrounds.
Yeah,
Not
and they cannot understand a lot of technical.
Yeah.
The majority of people can't understand
Yes.
technical things we write, so we can't make it into an academic
Yes.
paper or
Yes.
medical journal.
Yeah. You don't. You shouldn't feel as if you need a degree to be able to understand what's written in the paper.
Right.
So your readers can be lawyers, they can be doctors, they can be teachers, they can be anyone. So you have to make it simplify it in a way that is accessible to everyone.
Right. And I feel when we speak about degrees of relevance, as in your bachelor's degrees or master's or whatever qualification, right? I think we can agree that having a non-journalism degree will help you in a lot of ways as you enter the journalism field, because I feel now with everything accessible online, you can easily learn how to write, right? If you come in with other non-journalism degrees, for example, other professional degrees, legal, medical, science, engineering, it will help you put the message in the story better. Don't you think?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, yeah. You might see things the way that other people or other journalists won't see it. So that's an advantage for you. Though I wouldn't go as far as to say that everyone can write. Anyone can learn writing over the years. I think writing is one of those skills that I think journalism is unique in a way that I don't think you need a specific qualification in journalism to be able to be a journalist.
Correct.
But
I
that
agree.
still doesn't mean anyone can be a journalist.
Correct.
Because I feel like writing is one of those skills that either you have the talent, or you spend years developing it.
Yeah.
So yes, you can develop it, but it will take you a long time.
That is true. I feel like what I said earlier, when we have interns coming on board and working with us for those few months, right? It's interesting to learn their backgrounds and why they decided to learn writing or English or communications mass comm. Yeah.
I think I've come across people who say things like, well, we have AI now who can write for you, but I mean, I've used AI a lot. We've had a couple of trainings even in the company about how to use AI, but I think AI is a tool like any other, and a tool is not a tool. I mean, it can help you enhance your work, can improve your work, but I don't think it will. If you don't actually have the skills required to use that tool effectively,
Correct. That's
it's
another
not-
topic for
yeah,
another day. Yeah. That
maybe
is true.
another
Yeah,
episode.
yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Also, I feel from the people that we've talked to, those who come in for training in our organization, right? They don't have the full picture of what it takes to be a journalist. Now, we don't know what exactly is being taught in their classrooms about the industry as a whole, because it's more than coming to the office and reporting. The industry is a challenging one, and it's gone through a lot. So I don't think that, I'm not sure, I don't want to presume, but maybe that conversation has not been had, right? So do you think having the right degree is still relevant in today's market?
I think you kind of have to adjust your expectation a bit. And I'm not just talking specifically about journalism, because I've seen people who got upset because they feel like I studied something else, but now I'm forced to work in another field. But there are also people who take it in their stride and who said like, well, I studied something else, now I'm doing something else. For example, I have a friend who studied mechanical engineering, also in the UK. He came back, and I think for a time he used to write for a magazine or portal that specializes in cars or something. My point is this: whatever courses you see in the universities right now, those were designed based on the needs that existed back then. As we move forward, as the world changes, the industries change, you have to be prepared. You have to be prepared for the possibility that you're gonna have to diversify. You're gonna have to be open to doing things which were not taught at university before. But I'm sure if you've been to university, I don't know if you've done your diploma or anything like that, there are transferable skills.
Yeah.
There are things you've learned along the way that may not necessarily be academic, but you learn them and you can use them in your job. For example, like for me, I did competitive debating a lot, and those skills and analysis skills, the analytic skills I developed when I was doing that, I'm still using them in my work right now. So
I think the pandemic taught us a lot in terms of upskilling, reskilling, because the world was just, a lot of us, we were just sitting ducks. Well, not us, because we were in the forefront. We were the, what was the term again?
Frontliner?
Frontliners. That's right. We were reporting everything. And so during the pandemic, right, people who had their respective skills realized, okay, we're not frontliners, so what do we do now? We're going to get laid off. What do we do now? So there were a lot of professionals, as in people with legal degrees, medical degrees, science degrees, engineering degrees. A lot of them went on to become e-hailing drivers and riders, because that was what people needed, because we were all at home. We needed delivery services, right? So I feel that at that time there were plenty of people thinking whether their qualifications were a waste on some level. What's your take on this?
Okay, I actually got a scholarship for my degree and my master. It was a Malaysian government scholarship. So I've had this comment thrown at me a lot of times, many times in fact. Aren't you wasting your degree? Some even went as far as to say, you're wasting taxpayers' money. We paid you, a good money to go study in the UK. Now you come back, you become a journalist. So I mean, I think it's all how you see it. If you see a degree or a diploma or master as just a mere vehicle for you to get a job, as just a tool for you to go into the job market, then you might see it as a waste, because you've made this investment and it's not paying off. But if you see it as a place where you actually get knowledge, as a place where you actually learn about yourself and learn about the world, then it would not be a waste. Because going to university, getting higher education, getting tertiary education and all that, is more than just about getting a piece of certificate. It's also about the things and experience you get along the way. Because when you go to university, unless you stay in your dormitory all day long, I'm sure you go outside, you do things, you mix up with the lecture, you mingle with the lecturers, other students, people from other backgrounds. If you really optimize your time there, you are bound to obtain a lot of skills, which you're gonna definitely use. I mean, the certificate helps, sure, but having those other skills will help you stand out in the job market. And who knows what the job market is going to look like in 10, 20 years from now with AI coming into the picture. You have
Yeah,
to be
correct.
ready for that.
Yeah,
So it's not a waste.
that's right. How has your journey made you more open-minded about people's career pivots? Or before you answer, I I feel that again, studying counselling, you really try to be less judgmental. Don't you think?
So you were judgmental before this. I mean, I was.
I definitely was.
I mean, we all are to some
On
degree.
some level, I
Yeah.
think I still am, but I criticize myself more than other people, right? Because at this point, if you ask me if I could go back in time and redo things, I just might. Maybe had I studied harder in school, right? And possibly entered the science stream. Who knows? I could have become a doctor. But doctors go through challenging stuff now,
Yes,
right? We've
yes.
published so many stories about the medical industry, right? So many challenges. Again, my life could have gone 100 different ways. And clearly there's no way for me to hop in a time machine to change anything. So the only way is forward. Right? What do you think?
Would I want to go back in time and change?
Would you pick the same degree?
Probably not. Probably not.
Probably not, really.
Probably not. Yeah, but
What would you have studied?
I would love. I found out in recent years there's a field called international political economy that studies the relationships between economy and politics and how they affect each other.
What is that, a combination of economics and political science?
Yes.
Okay.
For example, you look at how for example, how, because of the Great Depression, how that led to the formation of supranational international bodies. You look at, for example, European Union, for example, which is a huge political bloc. It is a political bloc, but how it has helped to necessitate economic exchanges between those European countries. So these are the things that are studied, and given how chaotic the world is today, Trump in power, you have, so many things going on. Politics and economics are becoming more intertwined than ever.
Correct.
Oftentimes, economic concerns drive political decisions.
And those concerns and decisions have to be published in the various publications so people can know.
Yes.
So in that sense, our jobs are vital because we need to disseminate all these information.
Okay, true. That's a lot to think about, yes, but true.
It is true. So, Farid, what are your parting thoughts when it comes to the various qualifications that enhance the world of journalism?
Sorry, come again? There's a lot of question. Okay. What was your question again?
What are your parting thoughts for this episode about unrelated degrees
Oh, okay.
that enhance journalism?
Well, I think I recently read an article or something about how newsrooms around the world, especially in the West, are diversifying their workforce, their journalists. So they don't want just white journalists. They want journalists of color. They want people of color, because they think that will allow them to better reflect the demography when they write about them. And I think this applies to when it comes to backgrounds too, education backgrounds too. When you have I'm not saying doctors lah, maybe they are engineers, maybe they are people who are specialized in counseling, all come together. So I think that will make for, I don't know, a more
Interesting roundtable
yeah
discussion.
a more representative editorial tone, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Okay, well, this is our last episode for this season. And it's been quite an interesting journey, Farid, don't you think?
It is definitely, and we appreciate all the people who have come to view us. We really appreciate your support.
Yeah, and we might be back for the next season. Stay tuned, and thank you everyone for listening to us. This podcast will be available on YouTube at Star Online and www.star.com.my/metro.